If war with Iran escalates, most Americans will assume it's conflict happening somewhere far away from where they are. Looking at a map on the evening news, or some footage of missiles and military bases, and a panel of experts explaining why the situation is concerning. Which is television code for we're not entirely sure what is about to happen. But modern wars, they don't stay overseas anymore, because when conflict erupts in one of the most important energy regions on the earth, the consequences travel thousands and thousands of miles in a matter of days, and we've already seen that happening. Not through the bombs, through oil prices, shipping routes, insurance markets, and the global economy. Which means if a war with Iran expands even further than it has, some parts of the United States will feel it very, very quickly. And probably in ways most people aren't expecting. Because in the modern world, a conflict thousands and thousands of kilometers away can somehow affect your grocery bills. It just doesn't make sense, but it is a reality. How can something like that affect your electricity bills and the price of filling up your truck at the gas station? And that's when people suddenly become very interested in foreign policy. And why Iran matters globally. To understand why a conflict with Iran could ripple across the whole world. You have to understand geography. Right next to the Iran sits one of the most strategically important pathways on the whole planet, the Strait of Hormuz. It's been talking about on the news so many times. It's only about 40 kilometers wide at its narrowest point, which in global trade terms is basically the equivalent of trying to funnel the world's whole energy supply through something the width of a suburban highway. Every single day, roughly 20% of the world's oil supply passes through that little narrow window, that little narrow corridor. Tankers carrying energy from the Middle East to the rest of the world. All through this little funnel, this little route. It goes to Europe, Asia, North America, all relying on ships moving through the strip of water that could easily fit between two coastal towns. Which means that if passage is disrupted, even slightly, the impact is immediate. Oil markets react in minutes, and they have. Energy prices start going up, shipping routes panic, and governments everywhere start doing the geopolitical equivalent of their checking bank accounts. Because the global economy runs on energy. It's just the way of life now. And when the flow of energy becomes uncertain, markets start acting like there's someone just yelled fire in a crowd theatre. And if there's one thing guaranteed to get Americans suddenly interested in Middle Eastern politics, it's when filling up your truck at the gas station starts costing the same as a weekend away. War today doesn't just stay local. For most of history, wars were geographically, they were contained. Armies fought on battlefields back hundreds of years ago, even hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Cities were captured, and the effects were mostly limited to those regions that were actually involved. But the world today is very, very different. Economies are all connected. Energy markets are global now. Supply chains stretch across continents. Your phone might be designed in California, assembled in Asia, but using materials that are mined in Africa and shipping through the Middle East, which means when conflict breaks out in a key region, it doesn't just move across territory. It moves through systems, financial systems, energy systems, shipping systems, and those systems run straight through United States. Now, let's have a look at a few parts. The first, shock energy prices. The first place Americans would feel the impact of the war with Iran isn't with the military, it's energy. In the Strait of Hormuz were disrupted, as it has been, even partially. Oil prices have spiked dramatically, and energy prices affect almost everything. They affect transportation, which affects food manufacturing, electricity. Even products sitting quietly on store shelves have often travelled thousands and thousands of miles to get to where they are, which means when energy prices jump, the cost of almost everything moves with them. Trucking companies, they're paying more for their diesel to transport these goods. Airlines pay more for jet fuel. Shipping companies raise prices. And those increases slowly work their way into everyday life. Which is a polite way of saying a war on the other side of the planet can somehow make your grocery bill angry. Now let's have a look at another part. Let's have a look at part 2, we'll call this, and that is the states that feel it first. But not every state experiences these shocks equally. Some states sit directly at the center of America's energy system, and those states would feel the ripple effects first. Texas. Texas is the heart of the oil industry. It produces more crude oil than any other state in the country. It also houses major refining infrastructures and export terminals. When global oil markets spike, Texas becomes ground zero for the economic reaction. Energy companies adjust production. Drilling operations expand or they slow down, depending on the market expectations for that time. Investors pour money into energy companies, and suddenly a geopolitical conflict 12,000 kilometers away becomes a Texas business story. Now guess where the next place is? Louisiana. Every time I say Louisiana, I say it like I'm from Louisiana, but it sits right next to Texas in the energy equation. It's home to massive oil refineries and key shipping ports along the Gulf Coast. Much of the fuel used across the United States passes through this region, which means if global energy markets go chaotic, Louisiana becomes one of the main places where the shockwaves hit the American system. Ports handle more traffic. Refineries, again as we mentioned before, start adjusting production, and supply chains begin reorganizing themselves in real time. It's also the moment when everybody starts Googling, wait, where exactly does gasoline come from? Now let's take a look at part 3. Military states. Energy isn't the one system affected by conflict with Iran. The second system is military infrastructure. The United States maintains enormous military networks connected to operations in the Middle East, and several states host the forces most likely to be involved. Virginia. Virginia houses the largest naval base in the world. If naval operations increase in the Persian Gulf, ships from this network are often of the response. They're part of the response. And what that means is increased deployments, more ships moving, and a noticeable increase in military activity. And for many families in the region, global politics suddenly becomes personal. Now that it's starting to affect us, it becomes personal because deployments increase. Training intensifies for these people and the tempo of operation rate rises quickly. And there's also California, which plays a huge role in logistics and Pacific military infrastructures. It's also home to one of the largest economies on Earth, which means that global economic shocks show up there very, very quickly. Energy prices spike, shipping distributions affect ports, trade patterns shift, and California business begin adjusting almost immediately. And California already has expensive fuel. So if a global oil market panics, people might start treating petrol like it's a luxury item. Sir, would you like regular fuel or premium investment portfolio option? Now let's take a look at part 4. Shipping and trade. Another major system affected by war is global shipping. Modern economies depend on ships moving goods across the ocean constantly. Clothing, electronics, machinery, food. In the Strait of Hormuz, if the Strait of Hormuz becomes unstoppable, insurance for ships will skyrocket. Shipping routes will change. Cargo takes longer to reach its destination, and suddenly supply chains begin slowing down. Ports like Houston, Los Angeles, and Long Beach start feeling the pressure because when global shipping slows, American ports become the traffic jam, which, when you think about it, explains why sometimes a random global crisis somehow results in your online order saying delivery estimate sometime between Tuesday and the collapse of civilization. Now let's take a look at the financial shock. The third place Americans would feel the conflict with Iran is the financial system. Wars today don't just move tanks, they move markets. Stock markets react instantly to geopolitical risk. Investors move all their money. Currencies fluctuate. Insurance cost skyrockets. And businesses everywhere start recalculating their costs. Companies delay investment. Banks tighten up their lending strategies, and suddenly the economic uncertainty it starts to spread. Which is also the moment when everyone checks their retirement account and then quietly decides not to check it again for a few weeks. Now, let's take a look at part what I'm going to call number 6, the psychological effect that this has. There's also something less obvious that happens during global conflict, and that's uncertainty. Businesses, they hesitate. Consumers pull back spending. Investors wait to see what happens next. I know I'm doing this right now. And that slowdown alone can ripple through the economy, even before anything dramatic actually happens. Because sometimes fear of disruption can be almost as powerful as the disruption itself. How many people have you seen stocking up on toilet paper like they did during COVID? And the reality of modern war is, the truth is, a war with Iran wouldn't just feel military conflict, it would be a global economic event. Energy markets would react, shipping routes would shift, financial markets would swing, as we've already mentioned, and the governments would scramble to stabilise their prices. I just heard in Australia they're talking about how there's no fuel crisis when petrol stations are being closed. Countries everywhere would feel the ripple effects, because in a connected world, war doesn't stay where it starts. It spreads through the systems that connect modern economies. Energy trade, finances, supply chains, they're all linked together. Even if the fighting does remain thousands and thousands of miles away, and the consequences, they won't stay miles away, because modern conflicts doesn't just stay on the battlefield. It moves through economies and supply chains and the energy systems. And when one of the world's most important regions becomes unstable, the effects eventually reach everyone. There's no good can come of this, including the United States, especially the US, and often much sooner than people expect. Don't forget, if you like this content, please hit the subscribe button. I know we're a new channel. I'm learning, I'm growing. We're doing our best here to give you the best content we possibly can and keep you guys up to date. If you like the channel, please give it a like and a subscribe. Even leave some comments in the comment section on how we can improve and get better. What would you like to see? See you on the next one.